Good afternoon, Vernon. My name is Karen Davino. I am the Superintendent of Schools, and I am here with Dr. Chuck McKay, our Assistant Superintendent of Schools, who, as most of you know, is retiring at the end of the school year. So, before we get into this podcast, this is Chuck's last podcast, unless he does another one that I don't know about, which is very possible, right? So,
see you next Tuesday.
Yes.
No.
So we've been having a little bit of fun here with Mr. Shea and kind of getting ready for the podcast. And what you don't see behind the scenes is the opportunity to reflect and talk about all the really amazing stuff that's happened in the schools.
Right.
And then through the magic of technology, we kind of create this little package and send it out to you guys. I do know that, I'm not sure what this will look like at the end, but it was really, really important for me to sit down with Chuck. He's been here for 39 years in the school district. As many of you know, I came in September of 2018, so this fall I'll be here 4 years, a drop in the bucket in comparison to the time Chuck has been here. And it's my hope that I can carry on with some of the wonderful things that Chuck has established in Vernon, and we're calling them the Vernon way, right?
Oh,
and a lot
absolutely.
of things, a lot of it is your influence. So the first question I have is, share with our families, what are the things you're most proud of?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's been a great 4 years because I think when you came along, you wanted to foster some of the things that we thought was important but hadn't happened yet, right?
Yeah.
So immediately what comes to mind, of course, is what was at that point nascent in our community, which was the CTE programs, right? And you realize what we were trying to do, but they were, you had to foster them, right? And make sure that there was funding for them and
right.
make sure we used the grant properly that we won for that. So that was one of the programs, and the 8 programs that we have at the high school, what we're very proud of. Only because when you came, you had the same vision that I think I had, and I think the superintendent before you had, which was that the high school was a comprehensive place.
Absolutely, yep. Something for everybody.
Exactly. That whole talk about, yes, we know what we do for the top 20% or 30% or 40%, but are we making sure that we have an educational system that addresses the needs of all of our students? And we see it not only with what John Connell is doing over at SCC, but we see it even in our major universities everywhere, that they're trying to address that technology gap. Matt and I talk about it all the time. Matt's behind the camera, talking about, we have to make sure that the kids are trained and ready to go into the workforce. So we're very proud of that program.
And every child approaches it differently, right?
Absolutely.
Like every path or trajectory is different for every child. And look, I mean, Dr. McKay's being humble here, but he really worked with some folks who are not here in the district any longer to create these CTE programs kind of out of nothing, right? Which is huge. And Vernon has been recognized by the New Jersey School Boards Association 2 or 3 years running as having the best CTE programs in the state. So we are super proud of that. They're comprehensive because Dr. McKay created the vision and made it happen with some innovation and repurposing of teachers and certification changes and working with the state. And then we've continued to foster that, right? And I'll continue to do that after you go.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they've now reached a certain maturity, which...
And people are proud.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you see some of the kids in the programs and all the great things that they're doing, we don't have to... It's not as much that we don't have to do much more, but we just have to publish what the kids are doing, and then people realize what's going on, and that becomes part of the life of the high school. As an English teacher at the high school, I was very much a part of the life of the high school.
Yes.
Whether it was in the classroom with book clubs that we had, coaching, being involved with the administration on trying to bring ideas out of the classroom into the hallways, etc.
So talk about that. So for people at home who don't know, there are a lot of stories about you when you were a teacher. So you've got to share like an example of one of your lessons, whether it's The Hobbit or I've heard about a lot of this stuff. So now's your chance.
So there's a lot of people in our community that went through the high school, which is the best thing you can say about a community. First of all, I want to say that. And it's not an insular community. Our students then went to college in other places and decided to come back here because it was a great place to raise kids. So when you hear some of these stories, it's coming from the parents, hopefully not the grandparents, but maybe, of some of the things we did. But The Hobbit was one where we all dressed up as Hobbit characters, and some were station masters, and they were placed all around the building, and then the Hobbit travelers went around and they were asked questions.
Right.
But it ended up being sword fights in the hallway, slayings. There was fake blood everywhere. It was crazy. There was days where we did a jazz funeral for a character from The Awakening, in which we actually had a band in front, like a New Orleans funeral. And we
Wow.
carried a casket in which we had a dead body in, not a
real dead body.
And we had all sorts of things. We did trials all the time. We did outdoor activities. Mark and I did the trip to Boston.
Mm-hmm.
We oftentimes felt that the classroom had to be an active place for our students.
Absolutely.
And I think education has always felt that way, but what I have seen of our best educators is that there's engagement because it's designed engagement.
Yeah, yeah.
The idea simply is that you can go in and put on a show is a little bit of a fib. The truth of the matter is you better plan for the show
Yeah.
and how you're going to do it and how the engagement is going to work. So what you see from some of our best teachers, and I see it on the elementary level, I see it in the middle
Absolutely.
school, and I see it in our high school, is that they have made adequate preparation to make sure that the students actually run the classroom during that day, as opposed to just going in and sort of
Lecturing,
winging it or lecturing it. Yeah.
You know what's interesting is that, I mean, when you look at the research, I forget what the percentages are, but we learn best by doing, right?
Sure.
I mean, the largest percentage of retention happens through that kinesthetic, active engagement and learning, and least through,
Right.
lecture or visual,
Right.
but most through the active participation. So all of these events that
Exactly.
maybe students left and they're adults in the community now have said, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But they probably remember a whole lot of content from those lessons because of your energy and your planning and your engagement
Yep.
and having that active learning.
Yeah, I think
happen.
those experiences were touchstones for them, and it brings them back to
Yes.
what book were we studying, and what was he doing with that, and how did that work?
Yeah.
But many teachers who are very effective in the classroom have an understanding that if
Absolutely.
the child is actively involved in the education, and that is hard. It
sure is.
I think it's even harder today.
Now, after COVID, I agree.
After
Yeah.
COVID and the students having their phones in their hand,
Yeah.
it may be harder because you're
different.
competing with social media and you're competing with the websites that they're looking up,
Right.
et cetera. But I will say this, that when students were actively involved, at the end of any of those experiences, whether it was any of the ones that we talked about, or we used to do a trial for Their Eyes Are Watching God, and the kids were screaming during the class, or we'd have a repast after the jazz funeral, or whatever we did.
Right.
There was a sense that the kids felt they put everything they possibly could into it, and
Wow.
they got something out of
Wow.
it. So those are some experiences from the classroom, and also I always say this: when I was a teacher in the high school, I not only had the honors students, but I also had a group of 12th grade, usually mostly boys, which we called the Boys Club, and that was a class of young men who hadn't shown their academic promise yet in high school. And some of my favorite experiences
bet.
were with that group. And again, it was active engagement. We were working with various other folks who would come in and help, but it was
That's great.
it was also a great experience.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the great experience I had as an administrator was in Lounsbury.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, as the principal,
As the
right?
principal.
Some wonderful, wonderful moments there.
well, you had a wonderful staff again, and we just, I say that the building was firing on all pistons at one point, and we had lots of after-school activities and clubs. You can still go into the cafeteria and see all the banners that we had from the
Oh,
different
yeah.
clubs. And my feeling was, and I've talked to you about this a lot, my feeling was that when a child comes to school in the morning, I want to send them home tired
Yep.
at 4 o'clock, not at 2. And the idea simply was that may be the reason he or she comes to school.
That's right.
Whether it's,
That's
we
right.
had archery, we had after-school activities, we had metal detectors and we're looking around the yard for metal with our historical society. We were creating clubs on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was because students became interested in things that we wanted to do, so.
And talk about student voice, right? If a student says, "Hey, Dr. McKay, I'd like to look for this," you're like,
I will
"Okay."
find a teacher to run it, or
Yes.
I will run it myself.
Yep, yep.
And
Yeah,
the thing I'm
it's
proudest
meaningful.
about with that appointment was we would send the 4 o'clock buses home packed.
Yeah,
So,
good for you.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, if you were, If you were going to be here a few more years,
Yes.
what would be the next things that you would do? What are the next things that are on your mind? What direction do we need to go in post-COVID? If you were going to give me some advice
Right.
for the next couple of years,
Right.
what do you think
Other
is
than where to
next
get
for
blood
us?
pressure medicine? No,
Yes.
I'm kidding. I would say that I think that this is a key time to re-energize the school district.
I think so too.
And I think it's happening.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but I do think we have to re-energize our student body. We have to make sure our students understand the value of education. And I think having been away for a while, that was what this year was all about. And that's a tough road to hoe for our
is.
teachers and for our students. But to understand the value of an education means to be fully engaged in it. And it's not about going home. It's about being here. It's
Yeah.
about putting your all in. And I think in many ways, you'll see that resurgence in the next couple of years. But it is going to take a couple of years. This
Yeah.
thing was national, and it affected all of us, no doubt
You know,
about it.
it's interesting. Yesterday, we were chatting with some teachers, and one of the teachers talked about the senior walk.
Yes.
For folks at home, that's when our high school seniors, class of 22, put their gowns on. They walk all throughout the district. And when those high school seniors, 18 years old, see their second grade teacher and say, "Oh my goodness, I remember you, and you taught me X."
Yes.
That impact and that influence and that inspiration that the teacher has created for their child, who still remembers it as an adult as they graduate,
Right.
is just so powerful, right? And that's that active engagement that you're talking about, right?
yeah.
Is are those memories that are created between teachers and students, and that it's palatable during that walkthrough.
Sure.
I think the kids are really celebrating those connections. You know.
You ask any coach, any theater
Oh, yeah.
director,
Yeah.
Matt was down in Florida with the boys, any person that makes an impact on a child's life, what they inspire them to do is to work very hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really think that that's the one piece that we are going to adjust to as a society, which is how do we then inspire them again to work as hard as they possibly can to achieve goals that will help them in their
Absolutely.
lives.
I know.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Mr. Shea a little bit.
Absolutely.
So, before these video broadcasts, which we still call podcasts, even though they're not podcasts.
They're not really podcasts,
The
yeah.
podcast
Yeah.
is just audio.
Yeah, which is
folks,
what we
right?
started with.
Exactly.
Yes, right.
So, in honor of this being Dr. McKay's last broadcast,
Yep.
I thought it'd be wonderful to have Magic Matt Shea step from behind the camera to the front of the camera and relive some
All
of
right.
the best moments with Chuck McKay. So come on over, Mr. Shea. Let's trade.
Here, you go ahead.
This is something that Matt wasn't ready for, but this is great.
That's
This
right.
is
We're
just the way
springing
we
on
do
him.
it. So the truth of the matter is, when I started in my position at the board office, we needed to get news out. And we didn't know what to do. And the only person I knew that knew anything about it was Matt. So we started talking about how can I get information out to our folks, out to our teachers, and then when the pandemic hit, it was our lifeline. We didn't have anything. So we started with podcasts. Do you remember some of the early ones?
I remember some early podcasts in 2017.
Yeah.
Maybe earlier.
Yeah,
than
maybe it might have been 16, but yeah.
Yeah.
We were swimming upstream.
that.
Yeah.
I remember this. So I've been with the district 8 years. And so right when I started, you were supervisor of VLA.
Yes.
And then I think that next year was the year you transitioned to Lansbury Hollow.
Right.
I think that's right. And so just seeing him as a principal, and this is I'll throw down the gauntlet for any current or future principals. Like, I mean, he was an amazing principal and just had like so much energy and ideas and so much he wanted to do for the kids. So when I first like knew you as a principal, I was like, whoa, this is a different kind of administrator. I've worked with a few.
Yeah, the one who was always in trouble.
Yeah, and then later when he was on the roof and all the different activities, and so I knew Chuck was different. So then when you went to the central office to become assistant super, and we started having ideas for technology in the
Yes,
district, and
yes.
you were like, yeah, let's do it all, just throw everything against the wall.
Right.
So then we started doing podcasts.
Right.
And so you at first started doing like legit podcasts that were audio, and then we did some with PowerPoints.
Yep.
And so we finally did the first one on camera. And so this is my first memory of podcasts. And so you went through and you went through everything you wanted to cover, and I stopped the timer and I was like, listen, That was great, but that was 22 minutes, and it's got to be under 10 at least. So we're starting over. You got to go faster or cut something out.
Right. So then the second time I read it so fast, he's like, that's not going to work either, because we had so much to get in. But when we first started working together, I was at Lounsbury, and we introduced the first Chromebooks to the kids.
Yep.
Remember the white ones?
Yep, 5th grade.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we went before the Board of Ed and we asked them for $144,000 in order to pay for Chromebooks. And it was item X on the agenda. And when we got it, we both high-fived each other and said, our kids are going to have Chromebooks.
Yep. That was, hey, welcome to the district. We want 1-to-1. I was like, great.
Yeah.
But we did it.
Yeah. But that was the first
year. Next year, 5th and 6th grade, then 5th through 8th grade.
Absolutely. And it kept going from there because it had to be built, right? I mean, there was all that work to get it built.
So I have a question for the two of you.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about podcasts, how many bloopers or retakes did the two of you have to do together from when you were at the beginning of the recordings?
When he first started, he kept saying one take, but the truth of the matter was I was going too long.
It wasn't one take.
It wasn't one take.
He got better.
He was lying that it was one take, but what was happening was he put headphones on me and I would get jabbering about something because I was really excited about all these programs. And Matt
I'd look at my watch.
He'd be going like this with his watch. So therefore, that was a struggle. But I think for a while there we got professional, but then there was a couple of times that we had to introduce new ideas, and you and I were just nuts. When we introduced the app, and we were trying to do the Christmas Eve special, or the New Year's Eve special, and it was like a nightmare. We were trying to fire poppers. We had hats on. We were trying to blow through horns, etc.
Trying to get people excited.
And we were laughing so hard that I don't even know.
That had to be like 7 takes. I don't even know if I rolled
and
the
camera.
camera.
We were shooting it ourselves. Like there was nobody behind the camera. Matt set it up and then let the camera roll. And we were trying to introduce a new app. And then there's been a couple of other times where I would go to introduce something and was way off. Like I said the wrong thing or called it the wrong thing and. Matt would just cut it and go, that's not what the name of it is.
Yeah. Right, exactly. I'd be like, we're going to just reshoot that 10
seconds. Yeah.
Count to 3 and start over.
Right.
One of the things I thought that was important, and I want to pick your brain about what you thought were some of the best podcasts, but when we started them, it was to celebrate and share great things that kids were doing. I mean, that's one of the things I love about you is that you love to like see and celebrate the kids. But when the reconfiguration happened, that was a really hard time for the district. Oof. And so you're like, we need to do a reconfigure, like middle of summer, we're like reconfiguration podcast. And I was like, I don't know, like people may not be ready for that. But that one, and then I was even watching some of the old podcasts, March 13th, March 19th, like some of those podcasts when the pandemic hit.
Yeah, in 2020.
So when the district needed, that strength most, Chuck McKay was there. So that the reconfiguration, so I'm a stats person, so I looked at some of those videos, and so the reconfiguration video had about 1,500 views. So every parent was like, "Where is my kid going? What school are they in?"
School? And that was a crucial part.
Even some of the first pandemic videos had 800, 1,000 views because people want to know what's happening. Is my kid coming to school? What does school look like?
Yeah.
Are they going to be online?
Yeah, and we didn't have all the answers.
No.
We had a few, right? So we just did what our best. When March 13th happened, that next day, and that's one of those, you look at your history, we've lived through history. And I think the children who are seniors this year understand that. They've lived through history. But trying to get the Chromebooks out in the lobby of the high school, trying to get chargers out in the lobby of the high school, trying to get lunches out, and then getting that information out, which was at best partial information. I think that first time we said, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right?
And then it was a month. And then that was the rest of the year.
Right. And then we were reaching out to people going, give us everything that you possibly, Karen and I were asking them to give us as much information and pictures as you possibly can of great things that people were doing at home. Mm-hmm. At home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that when you did that for the reconfiguration and then you and Karen for Dr. Davino.
Yes, Dr. Davino. Yes,
Dr. Davino.
Yes.
When you guys started doing that for the pandemic, I think that grounded some people and gave them some comfort and put them at ease in times that were just chaos.
There's absolutely no doubt about it. And having Dr. Davino and I in front of the camera was just our way of getting information out as quickly as possible. We were turning it out as quickly as we possibly could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll try and wrap up here, but favorite podcast memories, favorite people you interviewed?
Yes, when we interviewed the young lady who was the subject of the Marvel comic.
Oh,
Yeah, Rebecca Briesehoff.
Was
Yeah.
absolutely one of my favorites. Very proud of her.
I know she's still going around and talking, so shout out to Rebecca Briesehoff.
Absolutely. There was a couple of times where Dr. Davino and I interviewed teams and
Yes,
folks.
that was a lot of fun.
There was one time on stage with the theater kids talking about a
yeah.
production. Anytime that we were,
baseball team.
yep,
last year,
anytime we
yeah.
were talking to students about what they were proud of,
Yeah.
that's us at our best, right?
Yep.
So, anyway, buddy, it's been my pleasure to work with you. The best thing that's happened to this district, IT-wise, personality-wise, is Mr. Matt Shea. So, you are my friend.
No, it's been a pleasure.
Yep.
And I guess that's where we'll sign off. So
Okay.
thanks, Vernon.
Sign up.
I don't know how to press stop.
Okay.
So
Edit.
I'm not touching anything. There's lights.
How long did we go?
I don't know.
You got it.
Chuck be laughing all the way to Paris.
Exactly.
Hope you're, like this. Hope you're having fun. That's a Matt Shea. Hope you're having fun in Paris. All right, let's do it.
Done.
Ready?
All right.
You're giving us a 3, 2, 1, and then you'll
Yep.
edit later. And
Yeah, whatever. Edit.
Two take
whatever.
McKay, that's what they call it.
No.
Right. 7 take McKay right here.